welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to this edition of the Hagmann and Hagmann Report on today, the 21st of November, 2013, on the eve of the 50th anniversary of the JFK assassination. I am your co-host, Joe Hagmann, along with my co-host who just joined me a little tardy, which we can let the few seconds slide, Doug Hagmann, to bring you 3 hours of unbiased news and uncensored news and analysis. You're listening to the only show where the news is presented in 3D. We look beyond the headlines, the bylines, to bring you the news behind the news. We broadcast each and every weeknight live from 8 to 11 p.m. You can find us on the internet at homelandsecurityus.com, and we also are simulcasted by the Christians United Broadcasting Network. There you can tune into the Hagmann and Hagmann Report, spell it all out. Thank you for joining us, and thank you for your belief and trust in us as we walk through this minefield of current events together. We are a listener-supported broadcast, and we want to thank everybody who has helped us stay on the air through your financial support, your prayers, and spreading the word about the show.
Indeed.
Tonight, we're going to be covering a lot. We're going to be hitting the latest news. We're going to be hitting going back 50 years and looking at the JFK assassination and the circumstances that surrounded it. And we're going to be taking your calls. And tomorrow night we'll be doing the same thing, picking up where we left off with JFK, followed by Brother Marcus in the second hour. And next Monday, Augusto Perez will be joining us.
Fantastic.
For the first 3 hours. Yes, it is. He has a lot to talk about. Comet Ison, the 3 days of darkness, and many other things we're going to get into with him Monday. We also have a lineup of some guests that we're not going to announce just yet, but we are lining them up, and the shows are going to be just fantastic as usual. And, you know, the guests really make the show, we can sit here and talk every day and should give you guys our opinion.
We do.
Right. And the guests, though, the caliber of people that come on our show, it's unmatched. These people are experts in their field, whether it's prophecy, scripture, whether it's, current events, financial happenings.
I'm glad you brought that up. And ladies and gentlemen, what we try to do is this. And I don't know whether y'all know, can you figure this? I mean, can you see where we're going with this? What we try to do is we try to grab different people who are relatively on the same page, or they can see the big picture. And what we try to do is we bring them on individually, and sometimes we mix it up with each other, and we try to connect the dots on a larger scale. And how do you think that's working out, folks?
Joe, how do you? I think it's working out great, and I like. A lot of people say they like the banter between us when we're talking about or debating on different issues. And I especially like that because when we were working as private investigators traveling to the far ends of the earth on a daily basis, this is what our conversations in the car or the van would be about. Only nobody would hear it. And actually, and there were times when we were moving at 65, 70 mile an hour that I tried to throw you out of the van. And I'm sure when I napped in the passenger seat, you tried to do the same. Oh, I remember one time we were came up to Buffalo. We were working a case in Niagara Falls where there was an insurance claim of a nurse being used for a friend coming to a friend's house providing services for, I think, 5 hours a day. And we had to be up in Niagara Falls every morning at 6 or 7 and document if this nurse was coming or not. And one of the days we were there, we had about 30 cases in Buffalo. So we hit the case first that we went up there to go do, and then we would drive around to 3 or 4 other cases to do status checks. And I remember wondering, I'd always ask my father, where do you want to do next? What order do you want to hit these cases? And one particular morning, he slept the whole, as I made all the rounds. And then he gets up, maybe 5 hours later, it's in that late afternoon, and he's ready to start working, and I'm ready to go home. And,
and that's why we complement each other so well. Nothing happened, of course. And I'm not too sure though, Joe. You didn't just pull the van off under a shade tree and sleep yourself. I'm not certain.
Well, we do have the pictures and documents and things to prove.
No, I remember that day. It's It's funny. And everything that we've done, it's a really kind of a unique relationship that we have, and I'm grateful for it. But working relationship and personal relationship, it's really interesting. And I just wanted to go back to this past weekend. We had such a great time with Russ Dizdar and his wife. I do have a picture that of the three of us that I should put up. Maybe I'll do it on Facebook. And so many people there. I just love everybody that we met. Every single person. Man.
I mean,
anyway,
the people were just. We can't say it enough how fantastic everybody was, how polite, how loving, how the absolute,
I could sit
warm
and talk with every one of those people that I met. We could sit down and we could just have conversations with them all day long.
Right, and I'm not saying this as a false flattery it was like meeting family.
It really was, yeah.
And you couldn't ask for better set of people to be with, and I'm sure that speaks for all the audience, not just the ones that we've met in our traveling so far.
And you know what, Russ Dizdar, I can call him Russ now, but Russ is not someone you would want to trifle with in terms of he's a real deal. I'll just say that, and he's worked with police agencies, and I went over some of my notes this morning. But by the way, ladies and gentlemen, what I've been doing for the last since it's 8 something Eastern time.
Yes, and I can verify he has been working on this.
Okay, now after I've been trying to do.
You've done a great job at it, actually.
Well, okay. Ladies and gentlemen, if you have any teenager that's really great at putting together videos, send them over to me. I got to tell you something. I sat right after the show. I started for the last 3 weeks. I've been working on the video, a specific video, 10 minutes of extreme information. And
I'll say this because it's not a video where you sit down and you're talking about an issue. This is a video built from scratch where you're trying to take video clips and music and images and put them all together. And you're not talking in this video. This is a video compilation of different things you're putting together. And I've tried to do this before. I remember 2 days. It took me about 6-7 hours each day, and I thought I accomplished this 4-minute video. And I went up to save it and load it to YouTube, and there was a processing error, and it lost the video, and I never tried again.
Well,
but we have the software now. We have the capabilities of the computers now. So now we just got to apply ourselves.
I started after the show to and by the way, this video is going to contain footage, rare footage. Okay, we had to go back into television studio archives from 1963 to grab some of this video, and we have that took quite a while to get that done, and then render it to a format where we could put it on our computer, which we did. And so last night, I've probably got 40 hours into this, and probably 30 of that is attempting to learn how to use the software properly, and then you have to 30 frames a second, then you have to figure 10 minutes, and how many tens of thousands of frames there are. Anyway, what I'm trying to say is hopefully tomorrow morning, assuming I can grab an hour or two sleep tonight, tomorrow morning it'll be up, and I think it'll be pretty. It's going to convey a message, a message that takes us back to 1963. What happened there? The reason for the assassination, how that, and why we should care. Why we should care about the revised history about JFK, and then bring it through to the present day. And I got to tell you, the more I study this, and the more we talk with people like Jerome Corsi and others, and Judith Very Baker, it's a big deal. The assassination of Kennedy was a huge. Well, obviously, what am I saying? A huge deal? Of course, it's a huge. But it's relevant today to where we are, and I'm absolutely convinced that the CIA was heavily involved. Well, it was behind it for two reasons. Number one, the actions in Southeast Asia. Number two, the Federal Reserve. And I'm also convinced that people in power today, some very people in power today, had their hands in that assassination. And I'm also convinced that if you look at John Brennan today, now this, folks, I'm not saying John Brennan had anything to do with the assassination, but if you look at John Brennan today, you will see the same power structure emerging with the CIA that existed back during the Dulles era.
Yeah, and we do have lots of information. I uploaded, actually, you don't know this, Dad, an interesting 6-minute audio on a look back at the investigation, the very intriguing things and the things that have not been heard too often. We're going to do that in the second hour, though. First, if we can...
Well, wait, before you go on, I just want to say this. Folks, if you're thinking this is going to be like a normal memorial, anniversary type thing where you see on the History Channel or on the news or on other programs where they're looking at the Kennedy assassination in retrospect, no, this is tonight's program, and the video and everything that we're doing tonight is looking at it from a different perspective, and the perspective of a coup that took place in America, a capturing of a nation, and this being part of a long, arduous, a very long path to the capturing of the United States.
Well, what the mainstream would call a conspiracy theory, but what we would call truth from our own investigation, as there are so many unanswered questions, so many people that were shocked, and when they heard Kennedy was killed, they remember where they were. They remember the emotions, the feelings that were going through their head. Such an open and public display of violence and hatred.
I remember where I was.
Yeah, I think the only person that I've ever heard who didn't was the senior of George Bush Sr., according to Jerome Corsi.
Yeah, exactly.
But let's hit some news here.
That's right.
I'm going to play a couple of quick audio clips. We're going to start with Joe Biden from 2008, something he said. Then we're going to go to Harry Reid into 2008, and then to today.
Interesting.
Isn't what really is going on here? The majority doesn't want to hear what others have to say, even if it's the truth. Senator Moynihan, my good friend who I served with for years, said, "You're entitled to your own opinion, but not your own facts." The nuclear option abandons America's sense of fair play. It's the one thing this country stands for, not filling the playing field on the side of those who control and own the field. I say to my friends on the Republican side, you may own the field right now, but you won't own it forever. And I pray God when the Democrats take back control, we don't make the kind of naked power grab you are doing, but I'm afraid you will teach my new colleagues the wrong lesson.
Yeah, well, Biden, your prayers were not answered. And here's Harry Reid from 2008.
Having worked with John McCain for 26 years, I have my own ideas about him, too.
You talk, Harry, about the nuclear option. You just mentioned it on Chapter 7 of your book. Describes the circumstances with the nuclear option. Just so our viewers can better understand, what was the nuclear option, and what likelihood is there that we're going to have to face nuclear option-like questions again?
What the Republicans came up with was a way to change our country forever. They made a decision. If they didn't get every judge they wanted, then they were going to make the Senate just like the House of Representatives. We would, in fact, have a unicameral legislature where a simple majority would determine whatever happens. In the House of Representatives today, Pelosi's the leader. Prior to that was Hastert. Whatever they wanted, Hastert or Pelosi, they get done. The rules over there allow that. The Senate was set up to be different. That was the genius, the vision of our founding fathers, that this bicameral legislature, which was unique, had two different duties. One was, as Franklin said, to pour the coffee into the saucer and let it cool off. That's why you have the ability to filibuster and to terminate filibuster. They wanted to get rid of all that, and that's what the nuclear option was all about.
And is there any likelihood that we're going to face circumstances like that again?
As long as I am the leader, the answer is no. I think we should just forget that That is a
Liar.
dark chapter in the history of the Senate. I hope we never, ever get to that again, because I really do believe it will ruin our country. I said during that debate that in all my years in government, that was the most important thing I ever worked on.
You hear that? It will ruin our country. The most important thing he ever worked on. Well, guess what happened today? The Senate approved the historic rules change by eliminating the use of the filibuster on all presidential nominees except those to the U.S. Supreme Court. Invoking the long-threatened nuclear option means that most of President Barack Obama's judicial and executive branch nominees no longer need to clear a 60-vote threshold to reach the Senate floor and get an up or down vote. Speaking at the White House, Obama praised the Senate action, which he voted against in 2007, accusing Republicans of attempting to block his nominees based on politics alone, not the merits of the nominee. This is an obstruction on substance, on qualifications. It's just to gum up the works, he said. Senate Majority Leader Harry Reid, who we just heard an audio from in 2008 saying this would be disastrous, would ruin the government, the way the government ran, said Thursday morning, meaning he called a vote to change the Senate rules by a simply majority vote. It passed 52-48. 3 Democrats voted against changing the rules. That was Carl Levin of Michigan, Joe Manchin of West Virginia, and Mark Pryor of Arkansas. It is time to change the Senate before the institution becomes obsolete, Reid said in the lengthy floor speech on Thursday morning. Now,
this has never been done, folks, in 225 years. This This is what tyrannies are made of. And don't think for 1 minute that this was not tacitly approved by John Bonnier, by others. When I say Bonnier, I'm talking about the entire, I'm technically incorrect there, but I will say the entirety of the so-called Republican right.
Now I have a 1-minute clip explaining what happened today, probably better than we can. Here is the 1-minute clip on the Senate voting to change the filibuster, changing rules that were in place since 1789.
A Fox News alert and a Senate institution that has been in place, we believe, since 1789 has just been changed on a 52-48 vote. Senate Majority Leader Harry Reid has invoked the so-called nuclear option. That vote wrapped up just moments ago. It makes the ability to filibuster by the minority party a lot more difficult. It curbs the Republicans' ability to block President Obama's nominees to various federal posts. We understand that this ruling does not affect the ability to filibuster Supreme Court nominees, but other appeals court and federal judicial court nominees can now go through on a simple majority vote. Republicans are howling, but they're in the minority right now. If that changes, Democrats may rue this day, but they have voted to invoke the nuclear option and change the filibuster rules in the U.S. Senate.
Isn't what really is going on here? The majority doesn't want to hear what others have to say, even if it's the truth. Senator Moynihan, my good friend who I served with for years, said, "You're entitled to your own opinion, but not your own facts." The nuclear option abandons America's sense of fair play. It's the one thing this country stands for, not tilting the playing field on the side of those who control and own the field. I say to my friends on the Republican side, you may own the field right now, but you won't own it forever. And I pray God when the Democrats take back control, we don't make the kind of naked power grab you are doing, but I'm afraid you will teach my new colleagues the wrong lesson.
Well, you just did that, Joe Biden, saying abandoning Americans' sense of fair play, this power grab would be, and the name nuclear option threw me off today when I was seeing the headlines that kept popping up. It has nothing to do with nuclear weapons. What it has to do is with remember the Super Congress that the House of Representatives instituted?
Oh, yeah.
6 Democrats, 6 Republicans, and the president?
Yeah.
That's what they've done here. Obama had 3 nominees that he were not cleared or not passed by the Senate, and they didn't like that they were being stopped or that their agenda of people being put in place was being obstructed. So what do? They changed the rules of the game. You know, you're playing a game, you're down a few points, you're not able to penetrate the defense of the other team. So what do? You change the rules of the game so that you give yourself the advantage based on whatever tools or tricks you have up your sleeve. Now, when the Republicans were in the stronghold of the House and the Senate before Obama took office, you heard Biden praying that they wouldn't do this. You heard Harry Reid say this would ruin our nation. Now, when they have the majority of the power in the Senate, what do? They make sure that they can clear the way for the president's nominations, except the Supreme Court nominations. But let me tell you something. The Supreme Court's already been taken over and corrupted.
Yeah.
And we only need to look at John Roberts' decision on Obamacare, a Republican, Bush-nominated Supreme Court justice, aside from Kagan, Sotomayor, the people that Obama has put in.
I'm fired tonight, my friend. Look, this is far more insidious than any political right-left paradigm reasoning that people are trying to apply to this. This is the royalty planning on never leaving, never loosening their hold on power. They're not worried about the other side using what they've put in place. If you can understand that right now, you see, wouldn't you be a little bit worried if you were planning, perhaps, if you were actually playing a game of football, if you change the rules, knowing that the other side is going to grab or going to have the ball, the next, what would that be called? After the kickoff or whatever, after the halftime, if the other side, whatever, you get my drift. If you knew the other side was going to be in possession of the ball, and you change the rules in favor of the team holding the ball, then you would think a little bit differently when you change those rules. So what I'm saying to you is, folks, don't look at this as a right-left political maneuver. No. This is a power grab, and we are now in the final stages of future enslavement.
Nor distraction, as I've heard saw a few headlines and heard a few people say today on their media outlets, this is just a distraction from Obamacare. Well, no, it's not.
This is as much, Joe. This is as much of a distraction as the eligibility of Barack Hussein Obama, and the very same people, I dare say, who are saying that this is a distraction are probably the same people who are calling the eligibility of Barack Hussein Obama, Barry Soetoro, a distraction. Well, am I right or not?
No, you're right, because one person's distraction is another one person's scandal, and what we are seeing here, if it's not, a majority of Americans who are awake consider it a scandal, then it's a distraction, and vice versa. But it's all headed down the same road. These political actions, whether it's Obamacare, whether it's the Super Congress, whether it's the NDAA, whether it's the Federal Restricted Buildings and Free Speech Zones Act, it's all headed down the same path. The Patriot Act, the Federal Reserve Act, one world government tyranny. This is what they want. They want the ability to not have elections so they can have selections. They want the ability not to have opposition when the ruling class wants to implement things like laws. Pretty soon they're going to have you don't even need a majority of the votes. You don't even need 50% of the votes to pass laws anymore. Congress passed a new provision that allows, if 3 Democrats and 3 Republicans agree, it's passed. I mean, how much usurping of the Constitution can they get away with? How much have they gotten away with? There should be the real question, because it's gone. Our checks and balances that were instituted since the beginning of our nation are gone. The Congress and Senate are obsolete, reduced to theater, and so maybe this is a distraction because they never held the real power in the first place anymore. Anyway, but regardless, our nation, as you always say, is a captured operation. We're captured from the inside, We're captured from the outside. We're captured because we turned ourselves in, and because we did not, remain alert those of us who wanted to keep what we had. So now we are going to see the consequences. We're going to live through what we allowed to happen.
Perhaps. And I'm not sure how much living we can do in an enslaved society. We're looking at a situation now where I don't know how many more people can deny or stick their head in the sand about what's really taking place, Joe. I really don't.
How much sand is there out there? Because I've seen, at this point, when people are presented with real, evidence, we're talking, you could have, let's just say, for an example, I don't know, that Watergate, well, I don't know, pick something. That somebody could admit to being the perpetrator, and have proof against them, and Obamacare could come out, or Obama could come out tomorrow and say, our whole goal with Obamacare was to centralize the healthcare industry and the economic, all the economy that brings in, to get rid of privatized insurance and only offer insurance from the government. He could come out and say that tomorrow, and how many people would say, well, this is what we wanted. This is what we voted for with Obamacare. Well, this is what we knew we were getting, even though they wouldn't have been able to explain it the day before. It is just this blind following, or there is this care about nothing attitude, or there are the two sides, Republican or Democrat, and then there are those who just want things to be restored, morals to be restored, and you can't legislate morality. So we have a system that is self-destructive, and it's going to see its end of destruction.
Well, and if you don't think this is planned in advance, just so you know, ladies and gentlemen, Obama has already submitted since 2 o'clock this afternoon, approximately 2 o'clock Eastern Time this afternoon, he's already submitted about 30 nominations to the Senate for Senate approval for judgeships. So what the last bastion of freedom in this country is our judiciary. And really what's happening here, he's stacking the deck and, of course, submitting the nominations for the Senate when they return from their recess. And if you've ever wondered what it would be like to live in East Germany or the 1970s Romania, here you go. Again, 30 individuals for judgeships and various positions for consideration by the Senate in the last 5 or 6 hours. Well, since 2 o'clock, whatever that would be. And here we go. And by the way, wait until the Federal Register releases its regulations on the 31st of the year. You're going to see some additional blowback or additional problems because of this move as well. Again, it's not a Republican and Democrat thing. This is now a single-party system, and it's ruled by a royalty, that being Obama, and it's ruled by, well, I wouldn't even say royalty as much as a tyranny, a tyrannical dictatorship. And it's gone from a soft dictatorship, soft martial law, now to it's ratcheting up for that martial law that will be coming in. And when I say martial law, I'm talking about maybe I shouldn't use that term. Certainly a change in the way we live, and a change in the laws, and the change in our freedoms. And I guess if you want to call that martial law, you can.
We should rename martial law, and we should. I don't know. Instead of martial law, we should just call it military governance.
There you go.
Why not?
Okay.
And back to Obamacare here. Second wave of health plan cancellation looms. A new independent analysis of Obamacare warns of a ticking time bomb, predicting a second wave of 50 to 100 million insurance policy cancellations next fall, right before the midterm elections. I mean, all the numbers that we've seen come out here, we should be in the negative of people who haven't. I thought the whole purpose of Obamacare was to get affordable health care to those who didn't have insurance. Not much of the country. Many people in the country did not have insurance. We have 300 and some million people in America, and we're seeing figures of 100 million, 200 million losing insurance. I didn't even know that many people had insurance in the country. Who's left?
You know what? And I'll say this, folks. I don't know, but I don't know what your family situation is. I don't know what your personal situation is, but I think it was last month, I believe, that I've had insurance. I'm a responsible adult. I consider myself to be a responsible adult. My wife and I have had insurance for years, health insurance. As a matter of fact, the same company. And, of course, listeners know, regular listeners know that I received a letter, we both did, that our insurance would be canceled effective the 31st of December. Now, I got a call from my doctor's office yesterday, and the nurse there said, look, we need to get you in for some tests, and some MRI and a CAT scan and some other things. And the reason I'm bringing this up is what she said next kind of floored me. She said, we're not sure if you are covered by your insurance right now. And I said, well, it's my understanding that I've got until the 31st, so if we have to do whatever we need to do, let's get it done now. And we'll work, we'll figure something else out in the meantime, as we get closer to the 1st. And she said, but we're not sure, if they're going to pay for the MRIs. And so my question was, well, how much is an MRI? And she said, I don't know. Yeah, but the reason I mention this is because this is causing such a chaos among policyholders all across the nation. It's just not the cancellations. It's what's happening in the meantime with tests, with cancer treatments, with physical therapy, for example, and even you mentioned, Joe, dental, mental and dental. You got notices on those,
right? We had in our healthcare through my wife's work. We had healthcare through her work and dental care also. It was in one package, medical and dental. We paid a premium once a month for that. Then a few months back, we got notice that we had to pay a separate premium for the dental than for the medical. And now we got another letter. They're basically doubling the premium for the medical a month, which, I'm not upset too much because it wasn't all that much to begin with. But I just have a feeling that by the January we're not going to have insurance. And
well, yeah, and like
for me, I went 10 years without insurance. I can do it. But the things that my wife's been going through, that wouldn't be good. So, we're going to have to figure this out. And if we, I won't be a part of, government care.
No, I won't either. And that's where I draw the line.
Yeah, and it's not that. I guess you could call me racist because I don't want, to have the government tell me what care I can or cannot receive. But I just want to be able to continue. This is the way things were. The health, like I said, I didn't have health insurance for 10 years. And thank the Lord that nothing serious happened to me during those times. It's not smart or wise. It was really not an option for a lot of the time. And then it was something that I couldn't do. But now that I have insurance, I do see the value in it and would never want to go without insurance again. But obviously this Affordable Care Act is forcing people, as they say in their own words, to transition them from their health plans that they say don't meet the minimum standard requirements when the plans that they're now letting people turn to or making people turn to, are triple the premiums, and they don't cover things that you need covered. As Steve or V said yesterday on the show, you could go to get a hearing aid, but that's not covered. Abortions will be covered for you,
and
being a man.
Yep,
but
there it is.
You can't get your hearing aid. You can't get tested to see if you need glasses. You can't get minimum standards with this HHS care. So whether we got to move out of the country, whether we need to train doctors and set up our own private industry, black market doctors, something's got to be done, because this is not going to, this is how they will carry out their large-scale eugenics in a fast way.
Absolutely, and that's what it's all about. We have to stop looking at the smaller aspects of things, and one can say, well, you were talking about your situation, but that's going to cause the chaos, and the chaos is going to be the real golden nugget that is going to usher in what happens next. It's going to serve as a catalyst. If you look at everything that's going on between the Affordable Care Act, between the recent decision, now the nuclear option by Reid, look at everything in a panoramic view and see how things are fitting, the pieces are fitting together. None of these are distractions. These are all pieces to a larger puzzle and or a larger picture. And folks, be prepared. Be prepared, because we are going to enter into a period of time where there will be pushback. And this pushback the response to the pushback will be of our rights. Or the, when I say
you got to come to the future, because that's happened, and they're now at
the complete extinction.
Look at our Constitution as a tree, and they have the axe. They're down to the stump. Okay.
Yeah, I was trying not to like be throw hyperbole in there, but no, you're absolutely correct. Without hyperbole, that we're down to the wire here. We're down to the
roots.
stumps. Yeah.
And those were plucked out a long time ago. If we want to be technical, otherwise we would still have a semblance of a republic. Instead, we have people who are the heads of government coming on saying we live in a constitutional democracy, and yes, we're socialists, and yes, we're progressives, and yes, we're communists, and yes, it's okay. If you're American, you're a terrorist, even though we live in America, and, blah, blah, blah. Just constant lies, constant subversion, and total takeover on all aspects. They took over the voting booths. Elections no longer have any, they don't matter anymore. They do matter in the sense that they say a winner comes out of there, but those people are selected before the voting booth is even open. And we have the economy, which in your video, and you've played this clip on the show many times, that they plan to kill the dollar. We know that they're going to kill the dollar. They have the economic, they have the political, they have the religious one world system set up. They're going for broke, and they are planning on implementing this thing whether we like it or not. And now 23 countries have begun to set up swap to bypass the U.S. dollar. This article today, from the 18th, 23 countries began setting up swap lines to bypass the U.S. dollar. For several years, financial analysts, primarily those outside of the U.S. and out of mainstream academia, have been warning that any day could be the black swan event that collapses the dollar and ends the U.S. hegemony as caretaker of the world's reserve currency. That day has finally arrived. A former head trader for the financial institution issued a harbinger and stated that 23 countries and 60% of the world's GDP are right now setting up swap lines to bypass the dollar, which will usher in a new global currency system to kill the dollar. You hear that? 60% of the world's GDP. That means, if this is true, 60% of the world's GDP is bypassing the U.S. dollar. It is no longer the world reserve currency.
Exactly. Yep.
On paper only, and that won't last long.
No. And isn't that what we said before? Isn't that what my good friend and the gentleman that had given me all the information about the Benghazi situation, about Syria, about the killing of the dollar? Isn't that what we said, going on a year ago, that this was their plan?
This was one of the things that we both agreed on, when we started to do the radio shows. Was that the U.S. economy was taken over long ago, that the world reserve currency status was being usurped, because back in 2009 we had countries coming out and saying, like China and Russia and Iran and these oil-producing countries and the countries in the East. We have India, which has their own whole 1.2 billion population, has their own biometric system in place. They have they're away from the dollar. China's moved away from the dollar. Russia's moving away from the dollar. And when you have your biggest holder of treasuries all moving away from the dollar, what does that say?
Right.
They're holding, China owns the most U.S. treasuries out of any country, and they are running as fast away from the dollar as they can, and at the same time publicly saying, we want to get away from the dollar, we want the U.S. Americanism to stop, we want this to be done with. Henry Kissinger and other globalists have been on record saying the rise of Asia, the rise of the East is coming, and this is what NAFTA and GATT and the Trans-Pacific Partnership we're for, as they're moving all manufacturing businesses and things off the U.S. coast to an industry to the eastern countries now.
Exactly.
We'll see what happens. We'll see. The only way we can recover if we're not, surrounded by actual standing armies, is through innovation and creativity of the people, not their wants and lusts and perceived needs, which will be the driving factor in most behaviors after this happens. But if we can be innovative, loving, and creative, we have a chance of surviving. But without that, we don't.
We can look back, or we can look at the situation right now. Of course, Barack Hussein Obama being in the Oval Office, Barry Soetoro, whatever his name is, and we know he, as far as I'm concerned, he is a creation and a product of our intelligence agencies. Just simply look back at his mother, his stepfather, and the circumstances, how they met, where they were working, the connection to Geithner, the Treasury Secretary, and of course, why? I just ask myself, and I ask constantly, why? Why is Obama in the Oval Office right now, illegally, of course, at this point until he could prove otherwise? And why is a man who hates America so much and everything America stands for occupying the Oval Office? And the only answer I can come up with is to preside over the complete and total destruction of the United States. Obama and his associates, the people around him, hate capitalism. They hate the white majority. They hate the Christians, and they hate Christianity. They hate the constraints that the Constitution provides. They really despise our military power, unless that military power is able to control our hearts and minds, which, of course, the inward turning is taking place. He looks upon, Obama and his cronies, they look upon all of these institutions and these ideologies as the enemy, and he is attacking them. They are attacking these simultaneously on all fronts to dilute and to mitigate the influence, to mitigate and dilute the influence of Christianity, to increase the dominance, their dominance over these institutions.
Yeah, we have news on out of the UK. If we can, this would be a good time to segue to this 3-minute clip on what is happening in the UK. Christians face extinction threat in the Mideast. Here is this clip.
Western officials are alarmed at the plight of Christians in the Middle East, where they're increasingly becoming targets of sectarian violence. Britain's faith minister says the turbulent region is now seeing an exodus of biblical proportions, with Christians under threat of becoming extinct in some countries. RT's Paula Slayer reports.
For many Christians in the Middle East, the Arab Spring has been wintry at best. The International Society for Human Rights says that 4 out of every 5 acts of religious discrimination in the world today are perpetrated and carried out against Christians. Nowhere is this more acutely felt than in the Middle East and North Africa. If you look at Syria, for example, where 10% of the total population is Christian, a third of them have already fled from the civil war that started 2 years ago, and that number continues to grow. After the murder of Father Basilius Nasser last year in 2012, the threats and the persecutions of Christians escalated, so much so that many today say the nightmare facing the Christians of Syria is the same nightmare that the Christians of Iraq have been living under since the invasion in 2003.
I believe it is all systematic and planned, forcing Christians to leave. In Iraq, for instance, less than 200,000 Christians remain. We do have concerns. We do hope we can stick to our land, Syria, which is the cradle of Christianity. We also hope that the Pope and heads of Christian denominations shall call for denouncing violence and adopting dialogue.
In August this year, the Christian town of Malula outside Damascus was attacked by rebels. Tens of soldiers were killed and many residents fled. It's still not clear how many of them have not returned to the village and where in Syria they have been displaced. Earlier, I visited the town of Homs, where a Syrian soldier took me to the front line and showed me the damage the rebels had carried out against a local church.
This is the church. Unfortunately, it was not like that before. Look at this destruction and mess. From here, the explosions were coming down on people praying. Of course, people started crying out for help from us. The priest was right here, and they were captured here in the church.
Elsewhere in Egypt, the Muslim Brotherhood supporters have blamed Christians for the army's ouster of their president Mohammed Morsi. More than 100 Christian sites were attacked and some 42 churches razed to the ground. While in Iraq, after the American invasion back in 2003, half of the Iraqi Christian population left for other Middle Eastern countries. An American think tank, the Pew Forum, says that Christians face harassment and oppression in 139 countries. This is nearly 3/4 of all the countries on the face of the earth. Paul Islia, RT, Tel Aviv.
So, the UK, which has been ahead of the U.S. in modernizing its culture, the way we have.
If you want to call it that.
I don't know what else to call it.
Well, I think that's kind of an interesting characterization, because don't forget, Obama wants to institute. Obama was the Rothschilds' selection to preside over America, that at the Bilderberg Conference in Chantilly, Virginia in 2008 over Hillary Clinton. And of course, with the Rothschilds comes the Eurocentric ideology. And of course, we see what the Eurocentric ideology is doing to Christians there. And this kind of buttresses what really troubles me is because, folks, Benghazi, the killing, the murder of 4 Americans, everyone is up in arms about that, or at least the people paying attention are up in arms over the killing of 4 Americans in Benghazi. But look at the larger issue, the 150,000 plus dead men, women, and children in Syria because of our policies. But this just came in via. I belong to a number of various news groups, intelligence-based news groups, and one of them had picked this up and said, this is what's coming to America. And it's troubling to hear this. One of the worst Christian massacres, complete with mass graves, women and children who were tortured to death. Churches, Christian churches that were destroyed, recently took place in Syria at the hands of U.S.-supported al-Qaeda terrorists, and the U.S. government and its mainstream media mouthpieces are silent, as usual. Now, there were 3 of 6 family members that were pictured in this intelligence briefing that were tortured and thrown into a grave. Again, these were by U.S.-supported al-Qaeda Islamic Muslim terrorists. The massacre took place in Saddad. It's an ancient Orthodox Christian habitat in Syria. In fact, it's old enough where it's even referenced in the Old Testament. Most of that area's inhabitants are poor. Saddad is situated in the remote desert between Homs and Damascus. Now, again, these are desert regions, and until now, the only place where Christians in Syria could feel secure. 600 Christian families had earlier fled for their sanctuary from the U.S.-backed war, only to be followed by it. Now, in October, the U.S.-supported al-Qaeda terrorists invaded and occupied Saddad for over a week until they were ousted by the nation's military. But among the atrocities, 45 Christians, including women and children, were killed. Several were tortured to death. Saddam's 14 churches, some of them dating back to the Old Testament times, were ransacked and destroyed. The bodies of 6 people from one family, ranging in ages from 16 to 90, Well, they were found at the bottom of a well. And by the way, this is an increasingly common fate for Christians. The U.S.-backed Muslim terrorist made a graphic video with English subtitles. I saw it, folks. It's horrendous. They made a video of those who they massacred while shouting Islam's victory cry. Of course, we all know Allah Akbar. And I would ask everyone too, before 9/11, did you ever hear that cry? I mean, we had, of course, the Cole bombing and things that happened before 9/11.
No, I mean, me personally, not that I remember, and it was never. I mean, after 9/11, it was a household knowledge. It was household knowledge. It was something people knew more than they knew who the vice president was, or
right. And of course, John McCain, though, he equates that victory cry, Allah Akbar, he equates that to the Christian saying of "Thank God."
Yeah,
and I'm not
he
kidding.
did say that on I think Fox and Friends a couple weeks back. Now, regardless of me personally, I'm not. I know that there are many Muslims out there that are not living this, idealism of convert or die. At the same time, they have. I go back to the Albert Pike letters, the three
Correct.
world wars,
Right.
and you look how that, and people will argue its authenticity or not, but regardless, look at how this has come, how far this has come. Look at the Bush administration and from before that, and how they set up PNAC, how they set up the boogeyman, the terrorism as the enemy, when terrorism is a tactic, not a enemy. And they have
target. Right.
They have people who believe that terrorists are everywhere, and you have the overreaching marginalization and labeling, people being called domestic extremists, terrorists, such as the Tea Party, pro-life groups, pro-marriage groups.
What you said just a second ago, I found an old news clip from 1964. Harry K. Smith, I believe it was. Do you remember that? And I believe this was repeated by Huntley and Brinkley. Those old enough to remember, they were talking about the Vietnamese and being over in Vietnam. They were talking about the Vietnam War in Southeast Asia, and referencing the Vietnamese as being everywhere and anywhere and unable to. It was the template for the Muslims of today, I guess is what I'm trying to say. And I believe I had isolated that clip in putting it into the video because it was so prophetic and so profound what they said about the war that we were fighting in Southeast Asia at the time, that it was like listening to the discussion about Al-Qaeda today. Now, I do believe, folks, just like communism was a threat and is a threat, because communism leads to, of course, the global governance. You need to have that communist ideology in order to establish a one world global governance, and you need the religious ideology to facilitate the religious part of the one world government, one world religion. And Islam is not a religion. It is a political framework that is disguised as a religion. And the sooner people understand that, now that's not to say that everyone who is a Muslim is a terrorist, but that is. But what I am saying is, Islam is not a religion. It's more of a cult and more of a political structure. Now I know I'm going to get. For those people from the Council on American Islamic Relations, the Southern Poverty Law Center, just quote me correctly when you register your objections. I am saying Islam is a cult. I am saying that Islam is is a political ideology first and a religious ideology second. And I believe that it's a tool that's being, the Muslims are tools being used to usher in this global governance. Because if you go back to what Bush and others have said, where and now it's picking up steam, where Muslims and Christians worship the same God. No, we don't. No, we don't. Never, absolutely, positively, we do not. But to make it so, saying it enough will make it so in the minds of many. And that's the brainwashing that is being instituted. So just understand that right now, just to go back a little bit to Syria, what's going on in Syria, the U.S.-backed terrorists are killing Christians. And that's not by accident. That's not collateral damage. That is by design, and that is they're in their crosshairs, and it's coming to this country.
I'm going to hit another story here, and then we're going to take a break, and I'm going to come back with an audio clip for the second hour. We're going to get into John F. Kennedy on the eve of the 50th anniversary of his assassination. This is a serious story. I want everybody to tune their ears in very closely. Peanut butter and jelly sandwich is in the news today. A Portland school official says peanut butter and jelly sandwiches are racist. The reason I
you can't even make this stuff up.
No, and the reason that I even wanted to talk about this tonight is because it just makes me smile. I think it's so funny to read this and talk about this. What people are, I mean, with all the problems that we have in our country, with all the issues, the division, you're going to do this and create more division. It says, do you know that eating or even talking about peanut butter and jelly could be considered racist? That's right. Apparently it's because some cultures don't eat sandwich bread. Gutierrez, principal at Harvey Scott K-8 school in Portland, explained in an interview with the Portland Tribune, take the peanut butter sandwich, a seemingly innocent example a teacher used in a lesson that school year, the Tribune said. What about salami or Hispanic students who might not eat sandwiches? Gutierrez asked. Another way would be to say, Americans eat peanut butter and jelly. Do you have anything like that? Let them tell you. Maybe they eat tortilla or pita. And I'm reading exactly word for word from this interview, from this article where the Portland Tribune interviewed this principal. If this is the caliber of intellectualism we have in a principal's office, it's no wonder Common Core is thriving in our schools.
Exactly. I mean. Yep. That's, you hit it right on the head.
I guess I read and got this article for a laugh, and it's making me mad as I did not read the article before the show, thinking that it was I thought there was an actual reason or the person would have a good story behind it. But basically stating that, cultures, people from different cultures don't eat the same thing. So unless, Americans have hamburgers and apple pie, I guess that's racist now because it doesn't fit in with the cultures of those around us. Where if I were to go to, I don't know, where's a country that eat, Thailand, I don't know, do they eat funny bugs and things there? It would be racist for them to eat, their normal foods if I'm an American in Thailand because, they're not placating to what I want or I expect them to eat. It's just so convoluted. How can you who would even run a story like this? Seriously, who's going to interview a principal and get into how peanut butter and jelly sandwiches are racist and then have the audacity to print it?
Well, you've got to wonder how anyone can equate the sandwich with privilege, regardless of the color, someone's color. Things change. Is this preparation for what's to come?
This is preparation for robots. You have to have an IQ of less than a single digit IQ to even understand this. And I know that didn't make sense, but what they are doing, it's obvious that the American and the North American intellectual level is at an all-time low. We know that we could take a 6th grade history test from the 1910 and give it to a graduating class of master college students, and they would fail. And they would fail.
Tests on folks are seriously.
I can't even understand half the questions.
Ladies and gentlemen, I would urge everyone, if you have a moment or two, find a elementary school test or an 8th grade test. I don't know how you'd search it by keyword, but find one from the early 20th century and go ahead and take it.
Yeah, I mean, it shows.
Wow.
They've dumbed us down through the language. They've made us malnutrition through the food. They've taken the substance out of the language. They've taken the substance out of the food. They've taken the value out of the money. They've taken the God out of the culture. They've taken everything that is anything, or what makes up the culture, what makes up the language, what makes up the value of the money, and they've destroyed it. Everything has been destroyed from within.
Everything good now is bad, and everything bad is good. And we're seeing not only the duality, the satanic duality, and please, folks, don't discount the satanic, the occult nature of what we're seeing take place in this country, because behind it, this agenda is the satanic agenda.
Yeah, Common Core wasn't developed by well-meaning mathematicians.
Or exactly, or a very Christian, conservative, morally conservative. No, of course not. So we have to understand, and of course, looking back 50 years ago tomorrow, how does everything fit in? How does the Kennedy assassination and the assassination of RFK and the Cole bombing and the Oklahoma City bombing and 9/11? How do all of these events fit together? They do.
And we're going to take a look back at Kennedy assassination. Right on the other side, we're going to go to the top of the hour break right now. We're going to come back with an audio giving you a glimpse back of the Warren Commission, the Kennedy assassination, and the Warren Commission and investigations that were launched after that. And then we're going to get into the Kennedy assassination for the next hour and take your phone calls for the rest of the show, as we want to hear what your take is on probably the Kennedy assassination, and if there's anything else that is vitally important that we need to hit.
Absolutely.
Bring it. Things that caught my attention was, one, J. Edgar Hoover's quote: "The thing I am most concerned about is having something issued so we can convince the public that Oswald is the real assassin." Why would you say that? I mean, if you believed why would you say in that way? It's one thing to say I believe Oswald is the assassin based on the evidence I have seen, but we're going to establish a commission to investigate, all aspects and avenues into this crime to be certain. Not we're going to do something to convince the public that Oswald was the real assassin. And somebody else in the chat mentioned, don't forget RFK, don't forget MLK, don't forget the other assassinations that took place in that timeline. And no, we can. And there were more than that, too. Those were the most famous assassinations, most public assassinations. But the ties to the Warren Commission and the 9/11 Commission, the ties to the out with the old and in with the new, the same themes, the same trickeries, where a commission was established, by the people who basically helped plan the killing of Kennedy, the Dulles brothers. You have people, Johnson, who issued the Warren Commission. It was basically a whitewash, like the 9/11 Commission was. They did not allow evidence. A lot of the testimony was behind closed doors. The investigation was an omission. And Gerald Ford was the last surviving member in that clip, it said, of the commission, where he said they found no evidence of a conspiracy, foreign or domestic. Well, obviously, you were sleeping during your time in the commission, or...
But you know what, Joe, the talk at the time, and folks, think about this, the talk at the time, too, was the moral or reasoning, and I want to thank RW for this, who reminded me of this during the break, that you at the time you could not point to a wider conspiracy because, of course, that would tear the country apart, or would have the potential to perhaps tear the country apart. And you had to make it clean and tidy, much like 9/11, and much like the eligibility or the birth certificate issue. You couldn't have something of this nature tearing the country apart. It wouldn't be good for the country. Yep. And a lot of things are done ostensibly for the good of the country.
In the 70s, the Congress formed the House Select Committee on Assassinations. Was this a committee that determined that there was a conspiracy?
Yes, in 1975. Did you say 75?
In the 70s.
Yeah, it was the House Select Committee on Assassinations.
And it dealt with all three.
Right, and they were pretty wishy-washy back then, because I remember watching this with, in fact, with my mother, who was still alive at the time, and she said she was very intent on this, and I think it didn't conclude until perhaps the 77, 78, around that time period. I'm not sure, but they were very. It was kind of milquetoast, insofar as they said, well, there was most likely a conspiracy,
but they never pursued beyond if it was a conspiracy or not.
Well, they never pursued any type of criminal investigation to what happened. No,
and I know exactly why, because the people that they would and knew who were responsible for it were the people who signed their paychecks, were the people who gave them their orders. It is not hard to see 50 years later, in the time that it happened, like 9/11, people were full of emotion, were full of confusion, did not quite understand or comprehend what was happening, how it was happening, even though there were warnings by people saying, look, this is going to happen. I mean, Bill Cooper, months before it happened, basically said exactly what was going to happen, how it was going to play out, who they were going to blame it on, and why. Yet, in the fog of war or in the fog of attack, a lot of that stuff goes out the window, and the emotions grab the better part of you, and you saw the people coming together under the banner of patriotism, and ironically, the Patriot Act, or the Destroy the Constitution Act, came out of 9/11, which was the intent. But it is amazing to see that so much inconsistencies in the JFK video, from the Secret Service pulling back. And this is stuff we covered with our interview that we had with Jerome Corsi. And we had him on, I'll get the date for people who want to go back.
September 26th. It's September 26th.
Yeah, his book.
September 26th. Sorry about that.
Who Really Killed Kennedy, 50 Years Later, The Stunning New Revelations About the JFK Assassination. He came on and talked about that. But I guess, after, I would imagine I wasn't alive then, after a year, I mean, with Oswald getting killed right away, that had to put up a lot of red flags and stop a lot of people in their tracks from thinking that it was him. Right. And maybe some others that led down to the path, well, it was him, and this guy killed Oswald for his country. But every person I know that is alive, that was alive when that happened, I don't know one person that believes Oswald did it.
Well, and the numbers, right after the Oliver Stone movie came out, I believe the numbers dropped to an incredibly low, like 10 to 15% believed that Oswald was a lone gunman. And there was a counter push to Stone's movie, which was rather interesting. I thought it was rather interesting anyway.
Still getting it from Bill O'Reilly.
Yeah, of course. I'm going to thank Mary Jo. Mary Jo, thank you so much for sending this to me. Jo, you don't have this, but she sent me, Mary Jo sent a piece by William Frederick, who has a master's in divinity. In fact, this is posted on the End+Times Forecaster. It's endtimesforecaster.blogspot.com. But I thought it was really interesting. I just got it a little bit ago. In fact, it came into my email box here at 806. Here is someone who is looking at the JFK assassination through the prism of present day, and also from the perspective of Obama's position. And remember, we have talked, you and I, Joe, have, and I've been pretty vocal about this. I don't believe I believe that there is a likelihood that Obama, once he is used up by the globalists, will perhaps be cast aside. And the best way to do that is to, of course, make him a martyr. And I believe that will also apply to Joe Biden. Now, I don't know, of course, if that's true, but I mean,
we've talked about this at length, and I agree, but I also think now that with the time that there is left in this administration and what they are planning on getting done, that might not even need to be necessary, or the appearance of that would only need to be accomplished.
Well, listen to this, and this is written by William Frederick, and again, the website is the End+Times Forecaster. He says on November 14th, he was driving, and he heard a history spot on the radio about Kennedy, and the announcer explained that it was 50 years to the day that Kennedy had visited Delaware, and he dedicated the I-95 highway, the announcer explained that it was 50 years to the day that JFK visited Delaware, and that was the day that he dedicated I-95 on 11/14/1963. And 8 days later, of course, he was assassinated. The next year, they renamed the highway to the John F. Kennedy Memorial Highway. And by the way, I don't think you can go into any city in the country where there's not a JFK Memorial Highway. At any rate, he writes that we all know that history has a way of repeating itself. And he, upon hearing this report, he wondered if Obama was in the same area on that day. Interesting kind of thinking, well, what's going on there?
What day?
On November 14th, 2013, which was 50 years after JFK visited that same place in Delaware. Well, all right. The next day, someone out of the blue said the traffic on 95 was really messed up because of Obama, him being in the area. He found that Obama was in the area. He attended a fundraising dinner at the Philadelphia home of Comcast tycoon David Cohen. Okay, now it gets a little bit convoluted here and kind of deep. In reading the account, it was apparent that Mr. Cohen and a lot of the people that attended this fundraising dinner were Jewish. And one word that caught his attention, this particular author's attention, was the use of the Hebrew word Dayenu. Okay? Dayenu is a song that is part of the Jewish holiday of Passover, and it means that it would have been enough for us. It would have been sufficient, or it would have sufficed. It's a traditional upbeat Passover song that's over 1,000 years old. Now, we know that the Illuminati, the Luciferians, the New World Order people like to attach things to the King James version of the Bible and Christian dates and specific dates and things. Anyway, that particular song, it lists many of the blessings of God, and it has a lot of meaning. Well, during Mr. Cohen's fundraiser speech, he listed several accomplishments of Obama, and after each, the crowd repeated Dayenu. Now, I don't know how you perceive that, but to transfer the meaning of a song to give praise to God to any human, does it sit well with you folks? Again, to transfer the meaning of a song that is really created to praise God, but instead is praising Obama. How do you feel about that? You see, it was almost as if the crowd was giving the illusion that they were equating the blessings and actions of God with the claimed accomplishments of Obama. Now again, follow me on this because this is kind of deep. So his question was, how will God respond to this in the other actions of Obama and our country? Will God say Dayenu to our nation and its leadership? Well, he writes, where am I going with all this? He says the thought crossed his mind that if Obama and Kennedy were in the same area, on the same highway, on the same day, 50 years apart, what else will follow that very same pattern? Well, he writes, let me show you some information about 11/22/13, the 50th anniversary of JFK. And you can make up your own mind. And folks, let me say this. I don't subscribe to specific dates. I do think there's significance in them, but to use them as a predictory type thing or prediction thing, no, I don't subscribe to that. At any rate, it was interesting how he connected the dots on this, because it was on January 18th of 2009 where Obama gave a speech at the Lincoln Memorial, and he had the crowd, or he and the crowd sang Don McLean, Bye Bye Miss American Pie. Of course, the lyrics, This Will Be the Day That I Die, that was at the Lincoln Memorial on January 18th of 2009. And if you do the math, from 1/18/09 to 11/22/13, it's 252 weeks, or 4 years and 44 weeks. Or on that day, it'll be 4 years. That's 444,444 minutes. Now, we all know that numbers hold significance. This is me talking now. We all know that numbers hold significance for the people and certain Illuminati and the shadow government. If you look at the Lincoln assassination, don't forget Obama's connection to Lincoln and his obsession with Lincoln. He was assassinated on 4/14/1865. Well, 4/14/1865 to 11/22/2013 is 148 years and 222 days. Well, in 48 years boils down to the number 13. Lincoln, by the way, was the 16th president. 4 + 4 + 4 + 4.
Now, are you getting into the similarities between the Kennedy and Lincoln assassinations the different?
No.
Wasn't there a,
Yeah.
There was
where Kennedy
the
was
names.
shot.
I mean, there was so many interesting connections that were there.
Yeah.
But okay. I wasn't half paying attention.
No,
I lost me like a math class.
Well, no, I wasn't getting into that at all. And of course, you're talking about the. In fact, your grandmother had a sheet like that, where, in fact, a penny attached to a card that had all these weird facts.
I mean, there were too many to be coincidence. It's obviously something divine showing us something, some message, some. Take a step back and look at this. Pay attention, because it's too.
Well, what this William Frederick, again, he's got a master's in divinity, and it doesn't matter anymore to me what initials or what the designations are after one's name. Really, we're all in this together, and I would trust just a normal person from Illinois or from Iowa, I should say, a grandmother that's lived her life, or an iron worker who's lived his life, as much as I would trust anyone else. But it's kind of interesting, because he gets into some pretty heavy duty occult symbology, the significance of numbers, and writes that in addition to, of course, as I said, Lincoln was the 60th president, which it's a 4 + 4 + 4 + 4. And if you go back to the number 4 of the earlier example of 444,444 minutes from the Lincoln Memorial speech to 11/22/13, which is tomorrow. It's pretty interesting. But he goes on and writes that another person that was deeply associated with the Lincoln Memorial, as well as Obama, is Martin Luther King. Well, MLK, Martin Luther King, was assassinated on April 4th, or 4/4/68. Well, 4/4/68 to 11/22/13. Do the math on that. It's let me look here. It's 40,044 hours. 444.
You're burning up my brain cells tonight.
Well, I guess if you look at those who hold numbers in significance, and those who work numbers, and like I said, we all know that there is a certain code, a certain communication. The Illuminati, the power structure, they've got a way to communicate things. And the easiest example, or the best example I could give, remember the 19.5 million fake Twitter followers that Obama reportedly had, and the number 19.5, and the story originating out of the Daily Mail. Well, this is what I'm talking about. I'm talking about a system of communication that only those in part of the club really understand. And they're communicating with each other. It's just like they're communicating with hand signals and what have you. Once again, I'm not really attempting to stretch this too far, but I've got to tell you,
it's pretty thin.
Well, you know what? If you look at this William Frederick gets into the Norway Spiral, Yitzhak Rabin assassination on 11/4/1995, and just a number of other issues. And remember, we talked about ley lines and different other lines. Well, lines or arcs on the earth can, and they often do have prophetic significance. You can, in fact, he writes where you can actually
I
see
agree
the
there. Yes.
Yeah. Okay. Well, you can see that if you look at the Fukushima tsunami. Yeah. Tsunami.
Sounds like a food.
Tsunami. Yeah, I'll take some General Tsunami, whatever it was. Take some chicken. Yeah, I'm telling you, I can sleep.
There are reasons for numbers to be there. I mean, look at Israel. It is basically the center of the globe. If you have it laid out on paper, it is I think they actually have done measurements on this, and it's in the Bible. It says as much. And we know 7 is the Lord's prophetic number. You have the 7. I was talking with somebody about this today. The 7 trumpets, the 7 vials, the 7 seals, the 7 voices, the 7 mountains. I mean, 7. And interestingly enough, I learned that there was we're coming up on a lot of people have been talking about these blood moons that are coming up in the next 2 years, both falling on the Feast of Tabernacles and Passover each time. And this Thanksgiving will be the first Thanksgiving in history where Thanksgiving and, is it Hanukkah, fall on the same day? But it's a Jewish holiday, and Thanksgiving is the first time ever. But
you mean Christmas, I think, right?
No, okay, I could be wrong. It's not Hanukkah. It's something else. I'm sorry. But Thanksgiving falls on the same day as a Jewish holiday for the first time ever this year, and the only time it will ever be. But what I was getting at...
Oh, and the moons, too, you said.
The blood moons in 2014, 2015 now. Okay, yeah, it's Hanukkah. What I saw today talked about the beginning of the last 7-year cycle, which started on September 30th, 2008. You know what happened on September 29th, 2008? The stock market, that's when it fell 777 points.
Okay. What day was that?
September 29th, 2008, or 2008. And it said that September 30th, 2008 was the new 7-year start of the new 7-year period. Now, whether the 7-year period and that ended on the last blood moon of 2015, September 14th, 2015. So the numbers do mean things. Now,
exactly.
God's numbers mean things. These evil ones that have used the numbers and have their own system of numbers, because we know that Satan and his hierarchy of minions will duplicate everything that the Lord has done or will try to do or will do.
Well,
we have to understand, maybe not so in depth about the numbers, but we have to understand that there will be this counterfeit of the Lord in every aspect of the Lord's work.
And you know what, Joe, and folks, one thing that I found, you talk about numbers, one thing that I found to be extremely relevant and extremely troubling, and I often talk about the radio show A View from Space. It airs every Saturday night at 6:40 a.m. Toronto, and I believe it's 11 o'clock every Saturday night, 6:40 a.m. Toronto. The name of the program is A View from Space. Gary Bell is the host, often known as, well, he calls himself the Spaceman. The December 22nd, 2012 edition of that program, 3.5 hours.
I remember that one.
And I've got this. I've actually have the file downloaded, and it's residing on a server on HomelandSecurityUS.com. I just don't have it connected to anything. But what really troubled me is his explanation, and he did a masterful job. I mean, I could listen to this 5 or 6 times more than I already have and still get more out of it. And I've taken notes, but think about this, folks. What would you think if someone told you that our Lord, that Jesus Christ, was actually born on 9/11/3 BC, September 11th, 3 BC? If you resolve the time, the calendars back then if you resolve his date of birth to the calendars, what would that make you think about 9/11/2001? Now, I'm not asking you to believe any of this. I'll tell you this flat out, based on his absolutely fantastic explanation in laying out the facts. I do believe it, especially when you consult the Bible and information of the Bible that talks about the alignment of the stars or the guiding star. Yeah, I'll tell you, I truly believe that his conclusions are accurate, that Jesus was born on 9/11/3 BC. And you might think, well, who cares?
No, it's not that who cares. It's I want more than somebody saying that much. I mean, I know there were birth certificates. I know there weren't, but we have to have a date somewhere. I mean,
look, but what I'm saying though is you haven't listened to that whole thing all the way through.
Do you remember going to North Carolina?
No, you've got to actually sit, and I'm serious about this. You've got to sit in a quiet room and pretend you are listening to a lecture, because that's how intense this is. He goes over the heavens, the alignment, the star alignment, the only time in history, how it would look from there in Bethlehem, and how it would look in the Middle East, and he lines that up with the descriptions in the Bible. But what I'm getting at, okay, go on.
No, you go ahead.
Well, what I'm getting at is this. We know that the people in power, the Illuminati, the Luciferians, they want to pervert our belief system. They want to pervert Christianity. They want to make a mockery of, and they are.
And they have, yes.
Yes. So, what better way to do so than to use the birth of our Savior, of our Lord Jesus Christ, as the day to enact this horrendous event of the attacks on 9/11. I mean, so
now
think about it being your birthday and having that happen specifically to pervert your celebration of your birth.
Well, let me say this. Christians who are rooted in the faith are not hanging on the day of Jesus' birth as though whether it was 9/11 or on December 25th.
But the other half of that is you got to wait. You got to figure the other half of that.
We need to be My point is, Christians who are maturing and learning and growing through prayer and through the Lord's Word know that every day should be practiced as Jesus' birthday. It should be celebrated.
That's a pretty trite thing to say.
His sacrifice for us, so that all can be saved or have the ability to be saved. You, me, and even the person who killed Kennedy.
Look, I understand that.
It doesn't matter when he was born or the exact date he was born, as far as I'm concerned. Now, if other Christians, if that's important to them, I'm not saying that's wrong. What I'm saying is...
Hold on. The other half of that is to force you as a Christian to celebrate the birth of Christ on a satanic holiday. That's the other part of it.
Well, yeah, and that's the Christmas, the pagan worshiping.
Right.
This is something I agree with you on. Now, it is one thing when you look at it through that lens, when you have December 25th and you have Christmas and Easter are both ancient Egyptian and pagan sun-worshipping holidays. Now, to take 9/11 and do what you did there, if that was the true birthday of Jesus, to me, it is important, but it's really irrelevant when it comes to me practicing my faith.
But hold on a second. But see, the other half of that, like I just said, fine. If you're okay with the 9/11 idea, think about then further perverting the ideology and forcing Christians to celebrate a pagan/satanic winter solstice holiday.
They used to force them, and they used to kill them. They used to kill and persecute Christians who did not worship on the days that the Roman emperors said to worship on. They used to, kill people, use people as light posts in their gardens. I mean, this is how sick this was. But
so I think it's really important.
My point is, there is a search for knowledge that doesn't need to be searched out until we understand the basics of Christ. Until we have are walking in the Spirit in His way, there are certain things we don't need to focus on. And I'm not saying that this is one or not one of them, but the fundamentals of Jesus and what His message was should be first and foremost, regardless of days, dates, numerology, astrology, astronomy. What I'm saying is what Jesus came here to deliver, the message He came here to deliver and solidify, what He solidified should be the point of focus, not the dates and times and things around that. But to each their own. I mean, if it will help save somebody by understanding this a certain way and say, you know what, well, okay, that makes a lot more sense. I understand why Christmas is on this day and this happened on this day, and maybe God is real and that will bring somebody to Christ, and that's different. But for Christians who know Jesus came here, don't have a doubt in their mind, the primary focus should be learning what He taught, not what the world and everybody else wants to say or throw in there. But like I said, I'm not saying what you're saying is wrong.
I disagree. I disagree wholeheartedly, because I do believe that it's important. It's sufficiently important because, number one, it helps us understand you can focus, and as well you should focus on the good and on the spiritual, on the pure, and that's what we need to focus on. But in so doing, you also have to understand the opposing side and understand what they are attempting to do to Christianity, to the followers of Jesus, and by understanding that part and understanding how they are perverting this and why they are perverting this, will help us to understand and keep us away from the deadly portions.
Yeah.
And I'm talking about the death of our souls. But you know what? We'll open the phone line, 661-244-9839. You can weigh in on things. Let's try to be brief if we can. I don't want to, certainly don't want to discourage people from talking, but if we can be brief with the callers, get as many in as we can, that would be really wonderful. So everyone's got a chance to say what's on their mind.
Yeah, and we have two more stories that I want to hit on real quick. One was given to me by Carl in the chat room, and it kind of dovetails with the second story that I had printed out here. Christians banned from asking about discrimination. Court ruling called bad day for freedom of speech. Really? In what was described as a bad day for freedom of speech, a Christian media organization has been prohibited from merely asking questions of the public about religious discrimination against them. The ruling comes from the Court of Appeals in the United Kingdom, was confirmed by officials in the premier Christian media. This goes back to the ad or the audio we played earlier.
Right.
In 2011, the organization had wanted to place ads on the radio stating, surveys have shown that over 60% of active Christians are being increasingly marginalized in the workplace. We are concerned that most accurate data to inform the public debate. We will use this data to help a fairer society. Please visit ccpmagazines.co.uk and report your experiences. Broadcast regulators called Radio Advertising Clearance Center and claimed the ad had a political objective and banned it. The court has now affirmed that censorship in the UK, basically stating that this is not only a bad day for freedom of speech, but for Christians, it is also a bad day for democracy in general and a bad day for the office of the Master of Rolls, a high-ranking judge in the UK said. Now, the second story.
Wait. I just want to say this to that story. You're looking at the future of America right here.
Yep.
This is coming to America. We collectively will be prohibited from criticizing Islam or specifically Islam, and we are going to be tapered from talking about Christianity.
Well, this next story is right up that alley and very close to home. Christian ministry threatened with jail time for serving local homeless and elderly. Liberty Institute and Independence Law Center, on behalf of its client Isaiah 61 Ministries, a well-established nonprofit Christian ministry serving homeless and elderly people in Harrisburg, PA, submitted a demand letter Monday to Dauphin County commissioners for wrongfully pushing a Christian ministry off public property and threatening to arrest ministry workers and volunteers if they continue their ministry on county property.
Wow.
And this fight continues. It says serving the homeless and elderly is a central tenet of the Christian faith, says Jeremy Dias, Liberty Institute attorney. Those who exercise their faith by caring for the poor on the streets of Harrisburg ought to be applauded for their kindness, not threatened with jail time, which, we don't need to restate the obvious Christianities here.
Where are the Christian ministers, the pastors? Why aren't they?
I'd go to jail.
Dauphin County.
Yeah, I'd stand right in the street and feed the homeless and go to jail for it, because there has to be a time when, as you say, where's my line in the sand? That's my line in the sand. If a police officer is going to try to throw me in jail for feeding the homeless, well, I'll go to put an extra pair of socks on and plan to go to jail. It's not that complicated.
What's with the extra pair of socks?
It's cold in jail.
Oh, okay.
You've obviously never been there.
I wouldn't tell you if I had.
I know. We'll get a phone call or two in here before the top of the hour, then we'll keep going with the phone calls on the other side. And thanks for your patience. We're going to go to area code 205 first. We're coming to you. You're live on the Hagmann and Hagmann Report. What's on your mind tonight?
Hi, Doug and Joe.
Hello there.
Well, I've been trying to get in for a long time, and I've never been able to get in. But tonight I'm glad I was able to get in, because I understand your point that you were making. And I said that same point on the 9/11 shooting. And I think it was kind of rare and crazy the way they done that, because they wanted us to be able to mourn dead people and people they have hurt instead of the life of Jesus.
Exactly. Yes. Thank you for that. Did you hear her?
That's the point. And that's the point you were trying to make, because now instead of us loving Jesus and knowing Jesus' birthday, they took that away and made it a sad day. So his heart goes out for the blood and tears that he lost so many people on his birthday, instead of being joyful on his birthday.
Exactly. How eloquent of you. How great. Thank you for articulating that much better than I did. Really appreciate that. My goodness.
Well, I've been trying to get in for a long time, and I listen to you guys, and I love you guys, and I love everything you're doing. And I'm from Tuscaloosa, and so I know a lot of things that's going on, and I'm around a lot of people that eyes are not open, that don't know what's going on. So, therefore, I'm just thankful to have you guys.
Well, we're thankful that you have us and we have you. One of these days we have to get like a T-shirts or polo shirts or something, coffee mug made up and send to callers like you, because fantastic. Thank you. What a wonderful assessment, and you articulated your point very well. And I just want to say thank you so much for helping me out.
And thank you. And you guys keep doing what you're doing.
All right. God bless.
God bless you. Thank you so much. And have a great evening.
You too.
Boy.
Bye-bye.
Man, we should do that. Have some sort of a...
Yeah, I know. There's something we should figure out.
My goodness.
Because we don't, as much as support as we're shown by the listeners, we need to show them as much support as possible, too, because we can't find a better audience no matter where we looked on any part of this earth. We're going to move on to another caller. This is a 1111111 number, so it's either a caller ID block or international call. But the person who just heard unmuted, you're live on the Hagmann and Hagmann Report.
You're up. Go ahead, caller.
All right, we're going to do this. I'm going to hit mute. We're going to hit unmute again.
And that's you.
Caller, you're live on the Hagmann and Hagmann Report.
That's you.
How you doing? Is this me?
Yeah, that's you. Sorry. We don't have your area code. I don't know whether you're an international caller or something else.
Nah, this is Mike from Fort Worth. How you doing, guys?
Good evening, Mike.
It was funny that I wanted to call in the other night when you had Greg on there. I've actually bodyguarded Ann Coulter, and it was just funny to have that whole show was just going after her big time.
Yeah. Well, tell us. I know that there's an ethical line that you dare not cross, but anything that we should know about Ann Coulter based on your personal experiences or anyone else that you've served?
Ann Coulter was cordial to me. When you bodyguard people, you really don't talk to them. That was just one of my things. I really didn't talk to them other than to be pleasant.
Right.
She was nice. I found nothing wrong with her. I bodyguarded a lot of people. My favorite person that I ever bodyguarded was Judge Napolitano on the one on Fox News.
Oh yeah, sure.
He's the real deal. He's so nice.
Now, Mike, let me ask you. Now, you said you bodyguarded for Ann Coulter and Judge Napolitano. You didn't talk really much with Ann Coulter. Was the judge conversational with you?
Oh, yes, sir. I spent the whole day with him, and he's just like a normal guy. He was so unbelievably nice and gracious. I really liked him. But that's not why I called. I got to get to this so I don't take up other people's time. I don't know if you noticed when Sebelius, I've heard nobody say it, but when she was up there testifying, she had a phoenix pin on her left shoulder. Did you happen to notice that, Doug?
I did. In fact, I got a couple of emails about it, and then someone had attempted to describe it as an eagle, improperly describe it as an eagle. But yes, I know what you're talking about. What do you make of that?
I think it's in your face. For the people in the know, it was a message to them saying, hey, look what we're doing. And for the people that don't know, it's like they're laughing at us.
Exactly. And the Phoenix, of course, representing, look, we're going to tear down we're going to reduce your system to ashes, to rubble, and then from that ashes and from that rubble, of course, will rise a new system. And, of course, that's represented by the Phoenix. And that's the significance of that. Very astute observation, by the way.
Yeah, I noticed that it's the exact same pin that Hillary Clinton has worn before, and also John McCain's wife.
Exactly. And, when Hillary Clinton, and I point to her testimony in front of the Senate subcommittee, when she testified about Benghazi, the colors that she wore, the jewelry that she had on, and specific things that she did.
What difference does it make?
Yeah, well, there were messages being sent, and I do believe as well that there was how do I put this? Some occult angle to that, some significance, some spell-like significance. But you're right, caller. To those who are not in the know, they're laughing at us. Very, very, very well said. Extremely well said. Any other observations like this that you've noticed?
One more thing that I'll mention, and I'll get off and make room for some of the other callers. They're so good. Have you ever seen that show Decoded with Brad Metzler?
No. Is it?
I have, yes.
What is it, YouTube or?
It's on the History Channel. It's called Decoded. He takes some of the top conspiracy theories and tries to break them down so mainstream media can digest them better.
No, I haven't. What struck you about that, caller?
Well, the show actually gets on my nerves because they never reach a conclusion that. But that's the point. The one show that made me jump off the couch and go, oh my god, was I've researched it's been a while, but there was a time when I researched the Spear of Destiny. Do you know what that is, Mr. Doug?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes. I've actually researched a lot of this. I know there are 4 alleged Spears of Destiny, from Armenia to the Vatican to a few other places. But go ahead.
Yeah.
Well, the show was kind of ho hum, and they were talking about the spear and the legends and all that kind of stuff. But it's worth your time to YouTube probably the last 5 or 10 minutes because they had a bodyguard that they interviewed, and he worked for a billionaire that lived in South Florida, and supposedly the guy had the spear, that they had stolen it at the end of World War II, and he said that he learned that the guy that he worked for belonged to I can't say it in Hebrew, but it's the Benai something, but whatever, it means like the sons of the Nephilim.
The Benai Elohim.
Yeah, that might be it, but the spear, that they're saving the spear to give to the Antichrist when he comes to power. And when the temple's rebuilt, from what I gathered, it's for him to walk in and walk up to the mercy seat and shed his blood on the mercy seat with the tip of that spear. And I was like, whoa.
Interesting. Yes. That brings me to mention there's also a belief that the Holy Grail, it was not a chalice or a cup as indicated, but actually Mary Magdalene. But that gets into the Merovingian bloodline and what have you. So all of this is interesting. I'll have to look up that History Channel expose on this. But I want to thank you for bringing that to our attention.
Yeah, thanks for your call. We're up against the top of the hour.
Okay, thank you guys. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
We appreciate you being part of our program. Go ahead.
I just want to say this about the Brad Meltzer. I forget what show it was, or I watched a few of those shows, and one that really turned me off was when they were going through Mason rituals and the Bohemian Grove rituals, and he equated it to walking into a mass and where they were given the Eucharist and saying this is the blood of,
right.
Somebody misinterpreting that as, drinking blood. Just basically with the skull and bones ritual, saying you can't just jump in without knowing everything. And
exactly.
I mean, that's just lunacy, in my opinion. But
you know what, Joe? These things are now coming out. And I believe what Russ says, and Russ Dizar and Steve Quayle and others, Paul McGuire, late Nathan Leal. We're seeing now this merging of the seen and unseen, or the tearing of the fabric, both of time and of space and of dimension. And I really believe that, and it's biblically based. And I think what we're going to be seeing is more of this, and in short order. This is why we talk about this. The dimensionality of this is important because what we're seeing is a three-dimensional chess game being played out by the globalists. Folks, you're listening to the Hagmann and the Hagmann Report. We're up against the top of the hour. We're going to be right back after these.
Ladies and gentlemen, to the third and final hour of this Thursday, November 21st edition of the Hagmann and Hagmann Report. We're going to be taking calls the rest of the show. Only a few in queue if you want to get on now. 661-244-9839 is the number. Or I will start calling people and seeing who wants to talk and who doesn't. No, we're going to go to the phones and people will be calling in, filling in as we go along. Give us your take about anything we talked about tonight, JFK, 50-year anniversary, peanut butter being racist, or the nuclear option that the Senate has done, or anything we did not cover in the first 2 hours. We're going to go to the phones. 515, we're coming to you first. Thanks for holding. You're live on the Hagmann and Hagmann Report. What is on your mind tonight?
Hey, Doug and Joe. How you guys doing tonight?
Fantastic. What is on your mind tonight?
Hey, well, I was really interested when you guys started talking about the actual time frame for the birth of Christ. I have been putting together some sermon notes this week and came across a video that I would recommend you check out. It's on the Jewish Voice website, and it's called Why Sukkot, S-U-K-K-O-T, is Yeshua's real birthday. And it brings to light some things in Scripture that we kind of miss as 21st century Americans or Westerners, if you will. And I just found it really fascinating. And in my studies this week, came across some stuff. I assume they use supercomputers, I'm not sure, but they go back and look at stuff happening in space with the planet Jupiter and Virgo, and how Jupiter came between the legs of Virgo, and, you know, just how God shows his majesty in the heavens. And we know from Scripture that he said he gave us the stellar bodies for signs and for seasons. And it was just fascinating. So I was really excited to hear you guys kind of talking about that stuff tonight. And it just shows God's handiwork, how amazing he is.
It certainly is amazing. And I've got to tell you that I just spoke again with my friend RW, and he was talking about the importance to God about precision, and of course how precise God is, and for example the number of the just pick an event that involves a time period according to God's laws or God's commandments or God, and think about, of course, 9/11 and how the heavens would line up, and how evidence does point to 9/11 being the birth of Jesus Christ, at least 9/11 of that year, 3 BC. And then again, the importance of them, the Satanists, the Luciferians, how important it is for them to imprint their mark on our belief, ideology, or and as RW just said, don't you think that the day of the birth of our Savior of all days, don't you think that there's a degree of importance behind that? And and they have perverted it, and we've allowed the perversion to take place. Of course, I don't think God would find it that humorous, or acceptable. So yeah, exactly.
No, and Doug, you're absolutely right. The Luciferians, the Satanists, people that are in witchcraft, they take their dates and their celebrations, they take that stuff very seriously. And one thing you'll find really interesting in this video on the Jewish Voice is they talk about that September date. Now, they don't say September 11th, but they do say September, that it was during the Feast of Tabernacles. And John 1:14 says, the Word became flesh and dwelt among us. Well, that word is tabernacle, and just fascinating. But I want to hang up and let you guys take some other calls, and I got to put my 5-year-old to bed. So I just want to thank you guys for everything you do, man.
Okay. Well, thank you so much, and good luck with getting your youngster to bed, and God bless. Be blessed with the with having a child at that age. My goodness, I remember when you were 5, Joe. And of course,
I remember. It's pretty crazy.
Yeah.
I remember a little bit about those times, and no, caller, God bless you and your family. You are lucky. Enjoy every minute of it, and thanks for calling.
And we will tune into that website. All right. I want to see that video as well. Joe, I want to see that video because I think it's so important. All right. Yeah. It's in us being, and of course this speaks to what Michael Repna spoke about last night, meaning the symbols on our money. Even it's like one big tattoo over everything, over our religion, over our belief system, that they're compelling us to follow their rules, not God's.
You're right. But you know what? There's one thing that they won't be able to do, and that is take our souls. They can try to put their marks on everything else, but we have the ability to,
of course,
to make sure that we do not let them take our souls or let them trick us out of our souls. That is one thing that we know, and we do have, and we don't have to let go of. They can mark anything else, but as long as God is the one that's marking us, we're okay.
Correct.
Moving along here. And if you want to join in the conversation, 661-244-9839 is the number. We're going to go to 440 area code. You're up next and live on the Hagmann and Hagmann Report.
Hey, Joe.
Good evening.
Hello. Peanut butter and jelly is not racist if you add chocolate and marshmallow.
Oh, good point.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well,
hey,
they should have inputted that part in the article.
Yeah.
You should be writing for this
I'm doing
review.
something I've never done before, and that's call in live. Actually, the first time I've ever listened live. I download your show every day, and I listen to it the following day while I'm driving my truck, and it's great. I love it.
Now you'll be able to hear yourself when you're driving tomorrow, which I'll just say hi to you today.
Yeah.
That'll blow your mind.
That's great. I emailed Joe, I don't know if he got it, in reference to a comment from Herbert Walker Bush, Daddy Bush, regarding when he was asked where he was when Kennedy was killed, and his response was, I was somewhere in Texas. Now, I was 6 years old, and I can tell you I was sitting in Mrs. Johnson's class, and my principal, Mrs. Bladerick, came on the loudspeaker and told us about it and then told us to go home. Now, I was 6 years old. So please explain to me how someone involved in the CIA and in the government only remembers that he was in Texas on that day.
Well, we know that at least Junior was not all that smart, did not have the brain power for a lot. But I don't care, what level your intelligence is. You're not going to be the future head of the CIA, the future president of the U.S., and not know. And then to be so arrogant and give an answer so vague that points to you in a way.
Well, you know what, Laura, I'll tell you this. There was a Freedom of Information Act lawsuit that unearthed a 1977-78 memo that shows that Bush, Sr., George H.W. Bush, was a member of the CIA and the recipient of a full briefing on the day after the assassination of Kennedy. Okay? Now, he was 39 years old at the time, and despite what he says publicly, privately, there does exist documentation to show that he provided information to the CIA. Now, there's additional evidence that also links him, Bush 41, directly to the scene, as you just pointed out. There's
documentation that says Obama was born in Hawaii too, but
right. But when you start getting into the authentication of the U.S. intelligence leaked photo taken just minutes after the assassination, and if you look at that photograph at the Texas School Book Depository, tell me that, that certainly looks to me like a contemporaneous photograph of George Herbert Walker Bush, contemporaneous to the time of 1963, him being a 39-year-old man. And then there was a FBI director, Hoover, who wrote the memo referring to the meeting of George Bush Sr., the briefing, I should say, on the night before Kennedy arrived in Dallas. Now, Hoover met with others at the Dallas ranch of Texas oil baron and Dallas cowboy owner Clint Murchison. Now, many people will remember that name from, of course, the Oliver Stone movie. But he was but again, he was the Texas oil guy. So anyway, yeah, caller, it's amazing, and you remember at your young age of 6.
Where were you, Doug?
I was in the same position or similar position. I was not in your class, but I was in the class, and the same deal. It was, the announcement and then go home. And I remember. I'm
sorry. I heard an interesting comment from. I haven't been able to get enough of this Kennedy thing. I think part of it is that I really do believe that was the death of America. And someone made a comment on a talk show today that kind of struck me. When you think about it, I was 6, and I remember how upset kids were back then. And I don't know that a lot of kids today would have that emotion. And what that talk show host was getting at is that perhaps everyone at that time, even kids, had a sense that something was terribly wrong outside of the president getting shot. And I thought that was interesting, that, when you see the video clips of the raw emotion of people just breaking down and crying,
yes.
And that was the case with a lot of kids our age.
Right.
We were shaken. I told my wife yesterday, I said, they were showing a clip of the funeral, of the procession, and I have the clippity-clop of the horses just etched in my brain, as it was they were going down the street with the casket.
Right. The caisson. Yeah.
Right.
Yep.
And I don't know why it is, but I really deep inside I just feel like that was really the death of America and the birth of the New World Order as we're seeing it today.
And that's my caller, the video that I'm working on right now is that it conveys that's what I'm attempting to convey through this video that I'm creating, using the footage from that day, as well as interspersing it with the New World Order, birthing of the New World Order, the modern New World Order. So, yeah, it's and I do believe that is a milestone or an event marker, a hinge point in time over what we're seeing today.
Right. Well, listen, last week when you guys, I knew you guys were heading down to Canton. I'm in Cleveland. I grew up in Akron, and I was going to drive down to Canton and say hi to you guys, but it just didn't work out. But I'm glad you had a good time. And
next time, come down. I'll tell you that the people are fantastic, and Russ, the course is the seminar was just absolutely stunning. The information that he puts on a great conference. But
the Russ Dizdar is, you guys kind of turned me on to him, and plus I don't know if you've ever heard of the Omega Man. He's on Blog Talk.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
And he is somebody that there needs to be a whole lot of him because of when you realize that I'm coming to grips just probably within the last year or two, with some of what Steve Quayle and Augusto Perez and just everybody is talking about the last days and portals, and when you see what's happening within our government, and you just have to say that this is just satanic, and it's, thank God for guys like Russ Dizdar, because at least he's taken the approach that it all starts and ends with a spiritual battle.
It does.
And I think when we realize that, it kind of changes your perspective. So anyway, Doug and Joe, thank you. I'll listen to myself tomorrow.
All right, buddy. You take care and drive safe.
All righty. Okay.
Watch out for that. Watch out for that deer in the road there. Okay.
You're not a kid. All righty. Bye-bye.
See you later.
Thanks for the call.
Mm-hmm.
Fantastic.
Yeah, it's great, and there's nothing like driving down the road and hearing yourself all of a sudden on the radio and not expecting it.
Or hearing your dad. I got to tell you, here in Erie, we have commercials on our local, the 1400 for Coast to Coast, and they used to run these commercials. My dad would be on Coast to Coast, and they'd take a segment of him and play it for the local spot here in Erie. Well, then they took some other clip and put that on Coast to Coast. And then I was driving, I think it was last week, I even called him, and I'm driving, and I hear his voice again, and it's on that same Coast to Coast commercial. And I said, they put that dumb thing back up.
I was driving with my wife, and we both looked at each other, and it's like, wow, you just don't expect it, but it really it does freak me out. It really, it does. I mentioned Clint Murchison's, and of course, if you go to or if you consult Pete Bruton's book called The Mafia, CIA, and George Bush, it was written in 1992, by the way. It talks about George de Mohrenschmidt, a very key subject of the Kennedy assassination in the House Select Committee on Assassinations. That was the probe of the 1970s. Well, he was a white Russian connected to Russia with extensive ties to the CIA. De Mohrenschmidt was associated with Clint Murchison's meat packing business and cattle ranches around Dallas, according to Mr. Bruton. Now, more importantly, Congress found that de Mohrenschmidt's personal address book contained the name of, you want to take a guess, Joe? George Herbert Walker Bush, providing additional evidence linking Bush 41 to events surrounding JFK's death, covered up and watered down by the Congressional Committee to protect the future presidents and others. And this is where it gets into, you see, no one's going to talk about this. People are going to talk about the Kennedy assassination very superficially, but dig down deep. Former President Bush has publicly stated he does not remember where he was on the day Kennedy was assassinated, and no prosecutor has interrogated him with respect to his ties to de Mohrenschmidt and Murchison, part of Nixon's Texans. This does go into the Nixon administration. And Hoover, his FBI memo states that the substance of the information was orally furnished to Mr. George Bush of the CIA on November 23rd, the day after the assassination. So, in other words, what we're saying here, there's a huge connection between George Herbert Walker Bush going into Nixon and then go backward, because Bowen, General Bowen, by the way, he was one of the original members of the OSS, which is the Office of Strategic Services, during the 1940s, along with, guess who? George Herbert Walker Bush and Henry Kissinger and Allen Dulles and others who became known as the Brown Shoe Boys, and that later became more formally known as the CIA that we have today, that is headed by John O. Brennan, who, John O. Brennan, of course, was very active in getting Obama's in sanitizing Obama's records and creating and furthering and facilitating the legend that is Barack Hussein Obama. Folks, do you see why the assassination is important? The assassination of Kennedy is just as important as the eligibility issue, as 9/11, as the cover-ups, because it is the same course of continuing course of criminal conduct. And we have the same people. People say, well, the Clintons never left power in Washington because of their influence. Well, you've got this criminal element that's pervasive throughout history, and even back into the 60s, and even before that, with respect to the Bush dynasty and others, and of course Kissinger and Dulles. Let's not forget about that, because it is important. I mean, it's so vital to understand that. You might think, well, George Herbert Walker Bush, what a great guy, but then of course look at his 9/11 1991 speech 10 years before 9/11 of 01, talking about the implementation of a New World Order. You don't think dates are important to these people? Absolutely, they're important to these people. Sorry.
You better be. I'm kidding. No, I understand what you're saying. We're going to move on to the call 626. We're coming to you next. You're live on the Hagmann and Hagmann Report. What is on your mind tonight?
Hey, Doug and Joe. Greetings and God's blessings upon you both.
Hey, my friend.
And I just wanted to mention quickly that when we celebrate our Day of Thanksgiving next week, I will certainly bow my head and give thanks to our Lord God for this show, for the effort that you both so diligently put forward, and for the family that creates the synergy and brings the Holy Spirit to these broadcasts. So I just wanted to mention that quickly.
You're very gracious. Thank you.
No, thank you. Gentlemen, I have a quick suggestion, an idea, and then I have a question for you both, and they're both pretty quick. Last night, that roundtable forum was great. I thought it was a great, fresh approach. I think I'll just speak for myself. It's just great to hear different takes on a topic, different opinions. So having the extra input there was fantastic. And it got me thinking, Doug, when you were touching on that sort of new approach earlier this evening, what if via the HomelandSecurityUS.com, what if you gentlemen presented a list of, say, your 20 or 30, mainstay guests, everybody from, L.A. Marzulli to Augusto Perez and,
right.
Russ Dizdar, and then the Hagmann and Hagmann family could go on the website and choose 2 or maybe even 3 of these names that they think would make a great round table. And then maybe, say, after 30 days or something like that, you could close the balloting, as it were, and see if these gentlemen or ladies would be willing to participate. That would make a great show.
Interesting. Yeah, we could do that. Okay.
Now, question. Are we considered part of those shows, or do we need to be voted in?
well, no, you know what?
I'm not asking. No, I'm serious.
Seriously, because sometimes and I got to say this, sometimes it pays for us to keep our mouths shut when they're talking, because you don't want to hear us. You want to hear the guests. So, yeah, I get that.
I mean, when Steve's on with a guest, and like last night, I love just sitting back and listening to what
me too.
Gentlemen, that's one of the things that makes the Hagmann and Hagmann Report truly different in the whole spectrum of alternative media, new media, because there are a couple of things that are the signature personality pieces of this show, and certainly one of them is the laid-back approach, the listening approach that you both are so willing to exemplify, not only with your guests but also with the callers. You know, I'll tell you what, the guests are some of the finest minds I've ever been privileged to listen to. But I learn a ton from these callers too. I'm constantly amazed at the depth and the perception and the intelligence of the people that participate. It just blows my mind.
We've had, believe it or not, and this is a really a glowing testament to all the callers and the listeners. We have actually had comments from pretty big name hosts themselves who said, you know, I happened to catch your show and your callers. There's always a comment about the educational the awareness and the how articulate the callers are most of the time. And you know, we all have bad nights, but so yeah, I mean, really, it's well, thanks. I mean, and we let people talk because, you know, that's one thing I don't like is this. Hey, you got 30 seconds, make your point, and then shut up. You know, I just don't like that. Or shouting someone down or shutting them off. I just unless they're really out of control.
And also the pre-screening as well. You know, I think it just keeps it so visceral and vibrant just to take that gamble. You know, put them on the air. I mean, fortunately, a vast majority of the H&H family members are believers, and so the subject matter stays way above par. But it's pretty bold that you format this without the screening process. Doug and Joe, I don't want to monopolize too much more time here, but I wanted to ask you a question, and I'd love to hear from you both, and I'll go ahead and make this my final remark. Doug, I remember very specifically riding in the car with my dad, probably at maybe 8 or 9 years of age, when I was old enough to comprehend it, and even at that young age had a great love for history. And I remember him explaining to me that day in 1963, my dad was 11 years old, and he explained to me how we lost a president, and then how several years later we lost his brother, who was probably going to be president. And so, Doug, I was hoping that you and Joe both could maybe share with us if there was a moment like father-son moment between the two of you, where, Doug, you explained this great national tragedy and turning point in our country to Joe. And I'll just kind of say goodnight from here, and I'll take that off air.
It's a good question.
Well, good night, and thank you for the call. Wow. You know what? Honestly, I don't remember a time that we actually...
He's explained a lot to me. I've had many questions over the years, but there was never an event where...
Not one that sticks out.
You know, 9/11 happened. That was a time right when I was just out of high school. I was not working with you then. I was working on making trouble. But you know, there's a lot of we had a lot of discussions where we would both explain things to each other. I would explain to him that he was a Nazi for liking George Bush. He would explain to me I was a knucklehead for things I thought were right.
And it's interesting, folks, that Joe is probably more correct about my perceptions than I was about his at that given moment in time.
It's funny. I could break down politics easily, but when it came to doing right and wrong, that was where the line was blurred for me.
Well, yeah, and of course, I think you're being a little bit too hard on yourself in that respect, but you'll have the listeners thinking that you were out there, committing armed robbery or something.
No, but you know how it is.
No, yeah, you were a challenge, I suppose. But aside from that, more to the point of the question, I think that there were times. Well, let's just put it this way. I think that we've evolved. Where are we today? Well, you hear where we are today. And that did not happen overnight. And folks, the only thing I'd really like to mention or to reinforce is, if you've got a son-in-law, especially son-in-laws, man, daughter-in-law, whatever, even a wife or a spouse that is not on the same page as you are. Trust me when I say this, give it 6 months. Give it 12 months at the outside. And I think that they're going to be more on the page, on your page, and asking you questions because you are so plugged into what is taking place. Don't give up. Don't lose your patience. Don't say, well, I don't have time to talk with you. Please show patience and understanding, because we were all, whether you know it or not, I mean, you were all at that point of denial, or if you weren't, you're the exception. You were at that point of I don't believe this, or it couldn't have happened this way, or that's just too far out, or too many. It couldn't have happened. It can't be a conspiracy. It would involve too many people. Well, when you understand how the system operates, you'll know that the reason for centralization and consolidation and control of information is to control the outflow of information, and of course, henceforth, control the conspiracy itself. So those people who continue, for example, to just slam on the Islamic aspect of the equation and limit that conversation, or the Republican or the Democrat aspect, anyone who adheres to that one narrow thought process without opening and encompassing all of the subjects, all of the, it goes to the depth of the problem and the dimension of the problem, the three-dimensional chess game that we are pawns in, and I think that that's so important. So don't lose patience with your family member or your loved one or others, or even yourself.
Or yourself.
Yep.
As I was muted there.
Yep.
Because there was times that I've seen people lose patience on themselves, and they're not here anymore. I've not. One thing I can say, and I don't know if this was from my mother or my father, but I've been an optimist more so than not, and I think that's got me through a whole heck of a lot more than I can imagine. But I've met people who are not optimists and don't see the light at the end of the tunnel and think, this moment or that moment is their make or break moment, and there's nothing beyond, no hope, coming again. And
let me just say this: there's a difference between being optimistic and wearing rose-colored glasses that tend to make you not see too well, or not with the acuity that you should see. And I think that we need to make that distinction. It's a very important distinction. You can always be an optimist, but not to the extent of adhering to your normalcy bias or embracing it with a death grip.
No, and I'm talking about when you're having problems in life, when you're there's many times that
There's always people worse.
You think you're doesn't get any worse than this. Well, it can, and it does. But that attitude that you have, am I going to continue? Am I going to continue moving with the Lord? Let Him do whatever He's going to do with me out of the situation I'm in, and keep moving, and keep my head up, and keep going? Or am I going to let this, make or break me? We need to be strong. We are going to be facing things that we couldn't even comprehend in the near future, and we're going to need to be stronger. So we're our own worst critics, at least if you're like me, you are, and we just have to keep, no matter how much that doubt will creep in from wherever it comes, always remember that the Lord is on our side, and if the Lord is on our side, it doesn't matter who is against us.
Don't be. This is one thing too. I've gotten a lot of emails about, especially around the holidays, the Thanksgiving and Christmas holidays that are celebrated. There's a lot of despair, especially if you are alone, and especially if you're alone facing what we talk about. Let's not despair. Don't despair, because number one, you're not really alone, and you're part of our family at the very least, and I'm not saying that just to be trite. It's not meant to be trite. I'm saying that because we really believe that you're part of our family, and we're all in this together, and none of us knows with precision what's going to happen. And if people say that they do, I'd be very wary of them. But we do know that we're in for some troubling times, and we're going to have some really bumpy roads ahead of us. So it's rather than wallow in despair, and it's easy to do because, man, I've been there, and I've seen others, I know others who are in despair right now. Just look around, take inventory of the good things that you have, and I'm not trying to be trite. I'm just, No, we
know. I mean,
it's rough. It really is rough.
We have to keep our mind out of the American exceptionalism and look at the rest of the world. Half the population living on $2 a day or $2 a week or less. A lot of people don't have running water, with 30-some thousand children starved to death a day.
Well, yeah, but Joe, you look at the news.
We have to be grateful. We have to keep the world at a distance to where we are understanding what's happening in the world, yet not letting it affect us or take away our joy, because then we can run into problems. We cannot let the world make us angry.
But I do. I'll tell you, I was behind a guy yesterday driving, Oh.
Yeah. Tomorrow night, we're going to have Brother Marcus on. I think he's on hold right now. I want to bring him on. If this is Brother Marcus, which I think I do recognize his number. Is that you, Brother Marcus?
Hey, that's me, Brother Joe. God bless you, Joe and Doug. I hope you don't mind me jumping in tonight just for a moment, but I just wanted to share something.
We're just going to cut it off your time tomorrow night.
That'll be fine. I save my voice some, but you were speaking concerning the assassination, of President Kennedy, and the Lord had given me a prophetic word a little over a year ago. In fact, I had sent it to Greg Evenson, and I think Greg Evenson had sent it to Brother Steve Quayle. And
I think Steve sent it to me.
Okay, and if you look at the very last sentence on one of the prophetic words that I sent one in one in August, and one in September, I believe. But at the very end of one of the prophetic words in poem fashion that I sent, the Lord had told me that President Kennedy was the last real president of our nation. I think one of your prior guests kind of alluded to how that was like a sign to him that this was the beginning of the destruction of America, although I believe it was long even beyond that that began to be a plan for destruction. But basically, My point is that I believe that President Kennedy was one of the last elected presidents, and then everybody after him has been selected. So we went from a position of being elected to having people selected by the New World Order. And if the Lord leads me to tomorrow night, one thing I want to share that I've not heard very many people talk about is the actual satanic ritual that took place on the day of President Kennedy's assassination. So we'll see how the Lord leads me.
Please do pray about that. But very interesting you brought that up. And a lot of people might be saying, huh? What are you talking about? Because that's important.
Well, let me just throw this in to you, Brother Doug.
Go ahead.
Okay. Heracles, in his commentary, in his writings in the Golden Verses of Pythagoras, he said, "Honor likewise the terrestrial demons by rendering them the worship lawfully due to them." And any time satanic worship occurs, there has to be a satanic sacrifice for the worship to be effective. And this ties into a lot of the natural events that we've seen in our nation. Time is not good for us right now to go into all of them, but in reference to the Kennedy assassination, there's a definite tie in there. So I'll pray about that and see how that goes tomorrow night. But I'm going to let you go, my friends. I look forward to being on tomorrow night. God bless you, and we'll let you take some more calls from other listeners.
All right, Marcus. God bless. Talk to you tomorrow. And folks, the satanic blood sacrifice, that ritual, the ritual of the Satanists and the Luciferians and and the dark magic look, this is so important to understand. It's once again, it's the belief that the system that is driving the powers behind the politicians and elected leaders. We look at what happened today with this vote, with this nuclear option vote, and do you think that happened just as a secular? Was that just merely a secular event, or did that also have a spiritual component to it? I will submit that it had a very spiritual significance to it, and I can. In fact, I was thinking about that earlier today, and perhaps I'll expand upon that tomorrow night. But go ahead, Joe.
All right, we're going to go back to the phones. Area code 757. We're coming to you next. You're live on the Hagmann and Hagmann Report.
Hey, how you doing, Dr. Joe?
Good.
Good. How are you?
I'm blessed and highly favored. Actually, I just wanted to make a comment about when we were talking about Jesus' birthday, and
yes.
I was getting in the whole conversation and whatnot. But in Matthew chapter 10, verse 16, Jesus says, "Behold, I send you forth as a sheep in the midst of the wolves. Be ye therefore wise as serpents and harmless as doves." And I believe, through that translation, being wise as serpent is knowing what the serpent does. I mean, the best way to defend yourself is to know what the offensive is going to be. So I do believe, so I do believe that Jesus was instructing us to know. Now, I'm not saying that we should dive more into the occult than in the Bible, but I do believe that we are supposed to know this. I mean, he's telling us. That's Jesus' words right there. It's telling us, y'all need to know what's going on with Satan, how he operates, what he does, so you'll be able to counteract that. Also with prayers, you can have a basic prayer where you say, Lord, help me with this, that, and the other, but your prayer becomes more powerful when you know what to pray for. So I believe we do need to have that knowledge, as wise as the serpent or as wise as the devil.
Very well said. Yeah. Extremely well said. It's like, I'll use the football analogy. If you've got the other team's playbook and you know that they're going to run a fake, we'll say, what do you call that? A fake, whatever. You can anticipate that, and isn't that important? So you're not deceived, and of course it is. So you again, a very, very well articulated position, and I want to thank you for that. Like I said, if we had a mug or a T-shirt, I'd send you one for being such a great caller. Great point.
Okay, thank you. God bless y'all.
God bless you, my friend.
God bless you too. You have a great night.
Yeah, man. I'm telling you, and see, the Bill O'Reillys of the world and the others that just blow this off and don't understand the significance, or I don't, folks. I'm tired of being talked down to. Are you? I'm getting really tired of being talked down to, whether it's by our elected leaders or by the talk show host on the left or the right. Don't talk down to us. And I'm tired of being manhandled.
With that Nerf bat so close, I'm afraid to answer that question.
I'm going to tell you, it's and I want to thank. You know who you are, who sent that Nerf bat. Thank you so very much for that. I don't think there's anything else that's got as much use in the recent days than that. But I'm tired of being talked down to. I'm tired of having my rights taken away. I'm tired of being treated like a worse than a dog. And I know you are too, ladies and gentlemen. And the thing is, I believe that we are going to have to put up a unified resistance, and I think that we're not going to need a leader necessarily, but we're going to need some sort of collective unification and a unified approach, and we're going to have to say enough is enough.
A house divided can't stand, and when we're fighting for each other, when we're fighting for our freedoms and our rights to live and the protection of one another, we're going to need to turn to love and to each other, there's not going to be room for any division among any lines.
None among the remnant.
I mean,
no.
Any division, anything that would bring division among those people would have to be overlooked or dealt with when it's an acceptable time, because we're running out of the time's too short. Things are too serious, or too dire, I should say, to be worried about trivial differences. If we cannot put those aside to obtain or work towards a greater goal of helping each other, putting each other first, building each other up, then we have no hope to begin with. We might as well not even try.
And I do have a feeling that in a short period of time, there will come a time where we are going to be called upon to make a stand. And when we do make that stand, it's going to have to be with this unity and this very focused sense of purpose. And we are not going to have the luxury of backing down. I trust me, I don't think we'll have that luxury. It's either stand up and make them stop, or stand up and stop them, or we are going to find ourselves imprisoned, enslaved, and our children enslaved, or worse, or dead. Because look at the abortions. Look at the assaults on Christians that are taking place right now with the Department of Defense, the Mickey Weinstein, that approach. And enough. It's going to be enough. It's got to be enough. We've got to stand up. We've got to corral our pastors and our ministers and the church body and the family members, whoever wants to make a stand with us. But we have to say to the Department of Homeland Security, to this regime led by Obama and his minions, that we are not going to put up with anymore. And I don't care. Obama and his right and left minions, the elected officials. There are 300 million of us and a lot fewer of you. So you damn well better be afraid of us, and excuse my language, but you better be more afraid of us than we are of you. Because we've got you, not only do we have you outnumbered, I do hope and I do believe that not only is God on our side, but we're on God's side. And that's what matters. And we're not going to put up with it. We are on the right side of history. We are on the right side of what God with God, and that's what we need. And we have to say it's over. It's enough. You're not going to push us around anymore. You're not going to take God any further out of our lives. You're not going to take any more of our rights away. In fact, you're going to restore some of the rights you've already taken away, and we are going to push it. And if that makes me or you or us a threat, individually or collectively, to this government, then so be it. But if we don't stick together, we're going to hang separately.
Couldn't have said it better myself. We're going to get another call in, area code 808. Thanks for holding. We're coming to you next. You're live on the Hagmann and Hagmann Report.
Hey, aloha.
Hey, buddy.
Good evening.
Yeah, hey, this is Kawhi guy calling, and I just want to thank you guys for providing the forum for the Watchmen, primarily, and
sure.
And just one subject that y'all might want to touch on when you kind of related to the Kennedy thing is the Warren Commission. Senator McCain's father, Admiral McCain, was in charge of the Whitewash Committee to cover up the USS Liberty incident.
We do know that, and we need to. I'll tell you what, we're up against the top of the hour, but we need to discuss that more. We do. The Liberty, boy. We've got a lot to say about that.
Just in a nutshell, I believe that was Lucifer's first attempt to start the World War III, leading it to introduce the Antichrist, but only by God's grace the USS Liberty did not sink, because it's on God's schedule. And I would just want to say aloha to the Remnant Forum, and God bless y'all.
Thank you, my friend. God bless you as well.
God bless you, too. Thanks for the wonderful call.
Aloha.
A homework assignment, ladies and gentlemen, for those interested in the JFK assassination, the other side of the story. There might be a little bit of a difficulty you might have in finding the truthful information about this, but search the name Richard Case, C-A-S-E, Richard Case, last name Nagel, N-A-G-E-L-L. You find out who he is, who he was, a very important component to the JFK assassination. In fact, he refused to be a patsy, and his story is absolutely fascinating. You will find some people attempting to debunk Richard Case Nagel, his account and what happened. He was walked into a bank in El Paso, Texas, and fired a couple of shots into the ceiling for a specific purpose. But I'll let you do the homework. That's a homework assignment. If you are interested in advancing your knowledge about the JFK assassination, Richard Case Nagel. I know the man who interviewed this man. He was, I think, one of the only people to interview Richard Case Nagel. Talked to him personally, face-to-face, and got the information, verified everything he said. And it's important to understand who this man is. Joe?
Absolutely. It is.